as I always say, it's such an important part of current missions that like we are all about the gospel preached, and not necessarily only humanitarian.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the humanitarian aid is obviously incredibly important.
It's important to us, yes.
But if we want, like you were saying earlier, just if we want to see generational change, if you want to actually turn this page, not just meet needs and continuing to help, problems. Here, we want to have a perspective on life and purpose, and that only comes through Christ. And so the fact that that's the first, and that's
I think the idea is to address material poverty and spiritual poverty at the same time.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Win Meeting, guys. Thanks for being here.
What's up?
Appreciate you coming in. Today we have Josh and Kevin who are hanging out with us this morning. We just had a church missions trip.
We did.
And going to talk about that a little bit. So Josh, why don't you introduce yourself for all the people who might not know you already?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Josh Sergi. I'm the missions minister here at Current, and always exciting to be on the Win Meeting podcast. Glad to be back.
Is it really?
Or it is.
Just saying that because
well, it's kind of what you're supposed to say in these situations.
Exciting might be too strong a word. It's nice.
It's always cool.
It's fine. Yeah,
I'm excited.
And if you guys don't know, we just got back from a amazing mission trip with one of our partners in South Dakota called Willow Ministries. It was a record-setting trip for Current. 19 participants, team members on this trip.
Wow.
So that was really great. On the other side of the trip, it was awesome. And we're joined today in the studio by one of those team members. Kevin is with us, man. If you'd take a second, introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Kevin Zisheng. My family and I.
I've been saying your name wrong all of this whole time.
It's common spelling. It's all right. It's phonetically it's what.
I've been saying Zaicheng.
Yeah,
it's close.
You're dead to me. So
no, jeez. I just call him Kevin now.
Kevin Z.
Yeah. Well, my wife April and our two kids have been coming to Current for about 6 years now. I'm one of the police officers, so you may see me out front on any given Sunday, helping out with security and stuff like that. I work for the Fulshear Police Department. I've been in law enforcement about 11 years now.
Yeah.
So, but we've kind of been plugging into the church for about almost 7 years.
Okay,
So,
I was going to say that. Yeah, you guys have been in Current for about 6-7 years, which is about how long we've been here. Was I already here when you guys started coming?
Yes.
Okay, so we must have been real close.
Yeah.
It's been about 6.5 years since we've been here. So
it only took 6 or 7 years to get you out on a mission trip.
Yeah, I'm a slow learner, I guess.
Hey,
diving
that's
in.
a lot faster than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, that's So Kevin, let's just talk about you a little bit before we get into the missions trip itself. Maybe just kind of talk about have you always been a church guy? Have you always been a
No.
Oh yeah. Okay.
No. I didn't grow up in the church.
Okay.
My mom studied the Bible, but my dad was always real cynical about church, so we didn't really ever go to church. It really wasn't until like 2015 that we found a church and we started attending, and I got baptized. I started serving, but my wife April, she grew up in the church, so like that was always. I always had this admiration for her and her relationship with God, and the conversation she was able to have just off the cuff. That was just really amazing to see that. I always knew that was missing in my life. So, but God tends to find people whenever they're at their low points, and maybe it's just because I'm really stubborn and I needed to be humbled several times in order to open myself up for that. So in 2015, I was baptized, and then it really wasn't until March of 2022 that I really had what I would call this, like, I guess, heart transformation that we talk about in church, and another low point, and out of that comes something really beautiful. So after that, I had some really strong convictions about our faith and really doing what God's called us to do and leading my family and being present at the church and serving and stuff like that. So that kind of led me towards, I'm already in service, right? I've been a police officer for 11 years. And I honestly, that culture is probably part of my distance from all of this. It's just easy to get sucked into that. But service was definitely something that I'm passionate about. So it was an easy transition for me to say, hey, I want to serve at church.
Yeah.
Hey, I have security. I'm a police officer. That makes sense. But then to take it a step further and be able to attend a mission trip was, I won't say it's an easy jump for me, but it was definitely something that that's kind of my love language, right? Like serving people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
Josh, just for people, can you just give, before we jump into like all the details and all that kind of stuff of how, it all went and your journey on it and all that stuff. Just tell people a little bit of like what we say Diamond Willow missions trip around here all the time and that kind of stuff, but especially lots of people haven't been, obviously. So, give them a little overview of who that is, who we go serve, and what we're doing there, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
give a little context.
Diamond Willow is essentially at its core is a local church in Fort Thompson, South Dakota. That's kind of the nucleus of their ministry. But outside of that, it's an outreach organization that has multiple let's say tendrils in the community there. They do lots of different things. On their campus itself, they have all different types of community centers where community events take place. But they also have a youth center that they just had a grand opening of last year. Yeah, that has been in the works for years. I know that they've been praying about it for years and working on it for years. And it has made its grand opening in the community there not even a full year ago. Yeah. And they minister in Fort Thompson, South Dakota, which is on the Crow Creek Indian Reservation there, Native American Reservation. You have two main people groups, the kind of the Lakota and the Dakota, that kind of inhabit that area, the two different languages that are spoken, kind of the native languages there. And their ministry field is difficult. Some of the statistics about the area are a bit sobering to know what the community's up against. Just to throw a few of them out there. And, some of this stuff isn't the most happy numbers, but I think it's important for all of us to understand what's going on in the community there in order to know how important the work that Diamond Willow is doing. So on the Crow Creek Reservation, the life expectancy, and I might be a little off on these figures, I'm going off of memory here, but I'm pretty darn close. The life expectancy for males is late 40s. Wow. I think it's like 46, 48, something like that. Life expectancy for women is a little higher, maybe 52, I think it was. So you have Rod Vaughn and his wife Val, who are the founders of Diamond Willow Ministries. One of the things that Rod told us is that him and his wife are considered to be one of the most elder married couples in the community, and they're in their like early or mid 50s. Wow. Yeah. The education system there struggles in ways that we almost can't comprehend, especially in such an education focused place like Katy. Yeah. One of the things that I learned this last time out, and Kevin, you were there for this too, that there is no general education in the school system. It's all special education. Oh, wow. Yeah, the learning disabilities and struggles at home are so prevalent that they just do only special ed for kids. And there's so many contributing factors to that. You've got obviously poverty. There's a 90+% addiction rate among males in the community. There's fetal alcohol syndrome as a factor. Fatherlessness in the home, and the list goes on and on. I could go on, unfortunately, but all that to say that it's a community in desperate need of help. Yeah, and I think I'm doing them justice by saying that their approach is to grab the youngest generation. One of the things that they really pointed out that clarified things for me is that one of their biggest goals is to have households with 3 generations of Christians, a grandparent, a parent, and a kid. And they believe that once they hit that tri-generational foundation in the community, that's when they will begin to see
Yeah.
real generative change for Christ.
Help break
in
some
the
cycles
community.
and change some expectations.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of it's already happening. Like they're starting to see
Well,
some
that's
of their
great.
first households
Wow.
where that is a fact, and it is already starting to take root.
Definitely the long game.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, I just think we in American church in general, when we think of missions and missions opportunities and all the being missionaries across the world and third world countries, all that stuff, and that is true, and we do that, and it's important.
We do.
But also to know that, quite honestly, what you're describing is not different and maybe as bad as or worse some third world type situations.
The numbers are comparable.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's right
Statistically,
here.
it is.
Yeah, and that's in the United States. That is whatever. I don't know what's the drive, like 15 hours or something like
18
that.
hours.
18 hours.
18.
Everywhere.
I made it to drive.
By yourself? You did the
No,
whole thing? Okay.
we had a band team, but it was
Yeah.
18 hours.
18 hours.
Yeah.
It takes 18 hours to get across Texas, to be fair. So,
Damn. Take you 18 hours to get across Houston. If you
right. I guess my point is, though, it's not that far.
Yeah.
It really is kind of on our doorstep. And so, I love that we're involved with that, and I love that ministry is happening, and that we're heavily involved, because that's a yearly trip we do. That's one of our regular annual missions trips that we consistently do.
Yeah.
And you mentioned when you said record number, 19 people went, is that the most we've had on like any missions trip? Is that just to Diamond Willow? What's
Yeah, so I went into the catacombs, the archives of current to find the ancient scrolls to determine
Google
what
Drive.
the biggest mission trip we ever did was. It certainly in my time, and to the best of my knowledge, 19 is the team size of 19 is the biggest one we've ever done.
That's awesome.
Is it possible that many moons ago we had a larger team? That's it, maybe, but as far as I could find out, that's the biggest one we ever did.
Best on record that we
best
can say.
on record.
Yes,
that's right.
And we've been going for a while, right? Like
long time.
Oh
20
yeah.
years or
I don't know if it's quite 20, but close.
Sure.
In the teens.
Yeah.
In the teens for sure.
long time.
Yeah. A little bit of the backstory is that we meaning Current, were one of the very first supporters of Diamond Willow. There's an even more colorful, detailed story about how it all began, but we were at the very genesis moment.
That's awesome.
Of Diamond Willow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really cool.
that's something to be proud of. That's really cool.
One other thing I'd add, especially with all the statistics and the community outreach that they do, all that is really important. But I think it's more important to point out that it's a ministry first. It's not just a humanitarian organization that helps the poor kids in such and such place. Rod is a pastor at heart. It's a church at its nucleus. It's a Christian outreach program that preaches the gospel to people who need to hear it the most, and a community support second.
Yeah.
They do it extraordinarily. They do both extraordinarily well. But as I always say, it's such an important part of Current Missions that we are all about the gospel preached, and not necessarily only humanitarian.
Yeah. Well, the humanitarian aid is obviously incredibly important.
It's important to us, yes.
But if we want, like you were saying earlier, just if we want to see generational change, if you want to actually turn this page, not just meet needs and continuing to help, problems, we want those problems to disappear. We want them to have a new hope and a new perspective on life and new purpose, and that only comes through Christ. And so the fact that that's the first, that's really great.
I think the idea is to address material poverty and spiritual poverty at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you. So Kevin, let's dive in a little bit on this trip, just specifically. You'd never been on a missions trip at all of any kind in your life, right?
No,
Nothing.
never. Yeah.
Not even. Have you ever even thought about it? Considered it? Even crossed your mind as a possibility? Right.
No, really, truly, no.
So what was it about this time of year, this trip itself? What triggered the hey, I might want to do that kind of thought process for you?
Yeah. So last season, I guess before we went on the trip, we were doing the men's Bible study. And so I was attending that. And some of the guys at the table, Danny Johnson actually was sitting next to me, and I had been tossing the idea around, but it was one of those things. It was like a back of my mind thought. I was like, man, that'd be cool to be able to do that and to serve. But there's a million roadblocks in the way, right? Like the time off,
you've got kids.
I've got
school is in.
I've got a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old. My wife works full time.
Yeah.
Like, I
mean, the good thing is though, you're super rich from being a cop.
Well, that's
there's
why I got
no
into
money
it,
problems.
Yeah.
You basically just pay for everybody.
That's
right?
why we're like stuck. That's why the recruiting is through the roof for law enforcement right now. It's all about
everybody wants to be a police officer.
And we get it as pastors. We're automatically well.
Similarly, massive.
So you understand. No, but it was it was back in my mind thought kind of thing, and it was one of those things that just kind of got planted there after hearing about the Darren and you talk about it on stage. Hey, this is upcoming, and then whenever Danny said it in our little men's group, we were going around the table asking for prayers, and the way we were doing it was like, hey, you pray for the guy next to you, and go around the circle like that. Well, Danny was sitting next to me, and Danny said, hey, I'm kind of tossing the idea around of going to Diamond Willow. Would you, can you say a prayer that I can find some discernment in that? And I said, me too, man. Like, hey, samesies, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you could do the same for me, I'd appreciate it. And that was on a Tuesday, and I think the deadline was that Sunday to sign up for it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And so we did. We prayed, and we prayed as a group. And I went home and I told April about it, and she's like, "Sign up, do it, man. Let's go."
That's awesome.
And so I did.
Thanks, April.
Yeah.
You know what though? You've mentioned her influence on you a couple times.
Oh yeah.
And it just be as we continue to dive in, I will say like it is the the unseen stuff that happens in our lives as men that the way our wives can push us to better things. That's such a cool thing, and to see it happening in this way, is a really cool thing.
Yeah. She's we've been together since high school, and we've been married for 11 years, and obviously we have two. We have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old boy, so we've gone through a lot of life together.
Yeah,
and she has never given up on hoping that I would come to this place. So thankful for her.
That's cool.
Beyond all else,
Yeah.
So, but that the men's group led to that, and then sure enough, Danny ended up. Danny has a cool story. I'm sure you guys, if you talk to Danny, he'll tell you his story. And somehow we both ended up on this team. And don't let Trey Brogdon tell you it was because of his group. Don't give him the satisfaction of taking credit for that. But he was the table leader of the group. So, but that's kind of how we ended up there.
Yeah.
And we said, all right, let's do it. And I signed up for it. I got in touch with Josh and said, can I drive? I'd rather drive than fly. And he said, well, yeah, you got it, man. So we
group got in the van. And awesome.
Ended up me and Danny were in the van together too. So,
Josh, I wanted to talk to you, your perspective on this, because if I remember correctly, a couple weeks prior to that, you were like, "Hey, church staff, like, this group is it's a little thin. Could we, we really just need prayer that we have a team that's worth." Going and actually getting stuff done and being effective, right?
Yeah,
Am I remembering that correctly?
Here, let me just throw this one adjustment in there. It wasn't weeks; it was days.
Days, okay.
Yeah. So if y'all don't know out there in internet land, the Win Meeting podcast is named after our Monday morning staff meeting.
Go back to podcast number 1. If you don't know the origin story, yes, go back to number 1.
So during our Monday morning Win Meeting, we have prayer requests at the end. I said, hey guys, the Diamond Willow due date is coming up in 6 days, the deadline to join. And we've got 4 people, or 3, I think even. We have 3 yeses and a maybe. So we've got some slots to fill. So please pray that God brings the people for the trip. Well, the next Win Meeting.
I remember this very specifically.
Yeah, I had a happy report. The real win was I said, "Hey guys, please stop praying for the team of Diamond Willow." Yeah. Pray for something else. We're good.
Covered that one well.
Yeah, we hit a point. Actually, it was 20, and we had one person, and for whatever reason, weren't able to make it.
Which happens.
It happens. Actually, out of 20, and 19 actually traveled. That's
real solid.
That's very solid. You know. So yeah, it was a major turnaround. We went from what was going to be the smallest Diamond Willow team ever to the largest Diamond Willow team ever in the course of 6 days. Yeah.
And I don't want to skip over the power of prayer.
That's
really does do. I mean, when you talk about like, a few days later, all of a sudden you're feeling this, push from the Holy Spirit. Like that's not an accident. That's not just a happenstance thing. Truth is, it's not that our church staff doesn't pray for things like this, but there is a difference when you say, hey, this is a real need. We really need to pray about this. And we get focused in and we really start praying and believing that God's going to do something. And then we see immediate response like that. It's just from my seat on the other side of the conference table. It's so cool to see that happen in the other ministries when we as a staff can come together in support of what we know is such an important thing. And then to see God do something so cool and push people like Kevin, who is not it's not like you're Mr. Missions guy that goes on all the trips or whatever. Obviously, Danny, he works with Current Covered a lot, but same thing. It's not like he's running all over the world doing mission trips all the time. Also, I was curious, like, how many first timers did you have?
There was a good amount. I want to say, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but like probably half of the people on the team had never been on any mission trip ever.
That's awesome.
And it was certainly their first current mission trip. And, I think you bring up something important there, Jeremiah, because I think there's a lot of folks out there who hear about a mission trip and they have maybe that same little stir as Kevin, like, oh man, maybe, but no, it's probably not something I would do. That's for somebody else.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, like, I don't think anyone comes to the table like, yes, I have been made for mission trip. I think everyone has a little bit of a hesitation at first. And and you mentioned like the Mr. or Mrs. Mission Trip, like, and they're out there, right? Like we have some people that they're out on pretty much every one, but they're certainly the minority. And there's always room for the first time person. In fact, I try to like make room for a first time person. There have been some trips where we kind of have to limit it and limit the number of slots, but I always like to try to get the mix of first timers in there. And I would say that if you're out there and you think that, oh, missions work seems interesting, but I couldn't pull it off, I couldn't put the time together, my job is too demanding. If you're called to it, God will make a way. And another thing is too, on these work trips, people often look at it like, well, I'm not a contractor, I'm not this, I'm not that, I don't have these skills. That's fine. Like I say it like this. The work is important, but it's not the most important thing.
Well, it's just what you were talking about earlier. The truth is we are there, wherever we are, to share the gospel.
That's right.
Yeah, we're going to do work and get things done and hopefully make some very effective physical improvements to wherever we've been and left. But that's not the first priority for what you guys
that's
do.
Right. That's right. And those things will fall into place. Like the work will be fine. It'll get done. So if you don't have some highly developed skill set, God has a use for you out there. We just say, like, if you're in reason on a work trip like Diamond Willow, if you're in reasonably good health and you're willing to be fluid and flexible and work however God wants to use you, well, you got a spot on the team.
I was going to bring this up later, but since we're already kind of talking about it too, just I think this, especially with the ladies, it can be kind of perceived as, oh, that's a guy's trip. They're doing manly work or whatever, and that's not true. That's not that there's not big hard work or whatever, but just the effectiveness and the need for more women to be part of these missions teams. We've talked a little bit about that before too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'd say that that's one thing that I prayed for a while, and God has moved in pretty big ways with that. I saw a need to have a more feminine presence on trips and to have women out there, and I knew after being out there in the field, like there is a place for women on these trips. And there's times where I could see how on the outside looking in, they're going out there to do this building stuff. They're going on these storm trips.
Yes.
Chainsaws and up on roofs, like
bunion stuff.
yeah, that's not exactly a place for most women where they're gonna feel drawn to.
Yeah.
But I'll say this: once we started having a stronger female presence, more women, especially on these storm trips, it changed everything.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that the folks that we minister to, because yes, we're cutting trees or doing whatever, but that tree is in a person's backyard,
Right,
and that person is there, and we talk to them. And a lot of the folks who we help, a lot of it's widow and orphan type ministries, a lot of single moms, and you get this group of dirty, sweaty dudes out there. Yeah, they'll come talk to us for a little bit, but not in the same way when there's 2 or 3 women on the team and they're praying and visiting and getting to know each other, and in the end, fellowshipping with one another there. It is a game changer. And to me, that is the ministry.
Yeah.
Like, put the chainsaw down and go talk to the lady. Yeah. Like, I would rather get 10 less trees cut and get 10 more mournful people prayed for.
Yeah.
Like the chainsaw is number 2, the roof is number 2, the heart, the soul, and the eternal destiny of the person is number 1.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, getting back to the story a little bit, Kevin. So tell me about kind of the next steps with that. I mean, you said the deadline was whatever, 5 days away or something like that. So what did that process look like for you? And then kind of getting into the actual missions trip stuff itself. How'd that go?
Yeah. So, like I said, the men's Bible study was on Tuesday night, and I think that Sunday was the deadline. It may have even been the one that you led. No, it was Trey. It was the one Trey led. Yeah, because you were right after Trey. So you was the next week. So, but the deadline was just a few days away, and so I'm already kind of a big trust your gut, and I kind of know that's God. That's kind of my job. You know what I mean? So I rely heavily on that kind of stuff. If something doesn't feel right, it's not right, and if something does, then you should probably follow it. There's a reason that's there. So as soon as I talked to April about it, she didn't even hesitate. She was like, "Do it now!" Like, why are you still standing here? Like, why are you not signing up for this? And she's like, "We'll figure it out. We'll make it work. Like, it's no problem." And fortunately, those pieces fell into place. I was able to take time off of work. I work rotating 12-hour shifts, so I really only had to take 4 days off. I took like 48 hours, but we were gone with the driving team. It was the 2 days extra, and so it ended up being like 9 days or 8 days, something like that. So it ended up working out really well for me. And I had work when I got back. I had I run our training program at work, and so I had a stack of stuff to do, but nobody. I mean, it wasn't worth not going. Right, like it was 100% worth that being left, so that I could go and experience this and pursue this. And stuff like that. So, but then we ended up leaving the day before the van team. Josh was cool. He hooked me up because I didn't want to fly. So he was like, yeah, we got a spot on the van. We'll do what we can. And so there ended up being 4 of us in the van. And I got hooked up as a driver. I can't believe. So they asked me to come and come in early and go down to rent the car and bring my ID, right? Because I have to be. I want to be a driver. Yeah. And I'm a police officer. I carry my ID everywhere. It's kind of policy. And it's kind of an important thing to be able to identify myself. So I get there and I'm like,
oh no.
No. This is the whole reason I'm here. I'm already failing at this, luckily I had a picture on my phone and I was able to show.
I swear I'm a police officer.
I told you that. I was like, I'll show you.
Like bringing up selfies in your uniform.
I promise I'm a police officer.
Sure.
Sure. She was like, whatever. Okay. All right. Thank goodness she did, because I got signed up, and so we ended up, when we left, we played Tetris in the van, getting some luggage and stuff.
We sure did.
Yeah, there was 19 people.
That's a lot. That's a lot to haul.
It's a lot of bags and tools and.
Right. Yeah, you got to be equipped to actually do stuff there.
Yeah, that's right.
And then there was only 4 of us in the van, so but the first Jeff Taylor and I were both driving, so we kind of alternated off, and
gotcha.
Got to see a lot of flat open space.
It's exciting
on the drive. No, once you hit north of Oklahoma, it pretty much just
north of Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma's not exactly like exciting country to drive through either.
The drive up through North Texas isn't very.
That's what I'm saying. Really, like once you get north of the woodlands, like it's
Pretty much immediately.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's rewind just a little though, because I would love for you guys to talk a little bit about just kind of the process. Because I think that's maybe something that holds people back from saying yes. They're scared of whatever the fundraising, the commitment level, a lot of this stuff can be intimidating. So maybe just talk about what that looked like a little. Like, what's the the lead up going before you guys actually take the trip?
Yeah. So for me personally, I never done that, and fundraising is a part of it. And they had a goal, and for everybody was preset, and it's pretty simple. I mean, you guys make it pretty easy with you can do a little bio write up on what the trip is, and you can send it out. Either what I did was I wrote it up, and I actually sent it out in a text message form. And it was a link to the little like synopsis of what we were going to be doing. And I put on there, hey, I'm excited for this. This is my first mission trip. If you can't give financially, prayers, man. Like we need all the support we can get. And it's not always financial, And so I was shocked. I mean, I had family that I haven't spoken to in a while that were dropping I didn't know we were that close, man. Like they were putting good money, good donations in there. Yeah. And it's because they were excited to see what was going to happen with this. And they were excited to see me personally, knowing me on a personal level. They were excited to see me pursuing something. And then, what this could bring for the community and stuff like that.
I think that's an important point. It's the stuff that I think a lot of people don't actually consider. When you choose to do something like a missions trip, yes, you're going to get a lot out of it, right? There's going to be a lot, but the ripple effect that happens just by taking the step of saying, I'm going to go. And then, like you said, people that you didn't even know paid attention to what's happening in your life, really, people that you didn't even know still looked at your Facebook page or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're donating to something you're doing, because almost nobody's going to get that text and be like, what a loser going on a mission. No, it's like, that's
probably to unfriend that person.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Maybe cut them out. Yeah. But the truth is that people are going to be excited for you and want you to do something like that. In fact, it's going to be, it's not, everybody's afraid of the no, like, no, I can't give to you. And they're afraid they're not going to be able to raise the money or whatever it is. That's almost, it's very much the minority that you don't get support, a lot of it.
Yeah. I that's absolutely true. And I think there's, if I could maybe even zoom out more, where like there are times where it may not necessarily even be you that they're concerned about supporting, right? Like I think there's a lot of trepidation, nervousness, hesitation of somebody to raise funds, right? Like nobody wants to ask people for money, right? Like, hey,
door salesman or something.
Yeah, like well, actually that's not true. There are people who have no problem asking for money. I have a few of them
there
on
are some,
my own social media feeds. However, most of us don't like asking people for money. It can be it is intimidating, especially your first time to do it. But one thing I often encourage participants, team members to do is like pull yourself out of it. Like you're not asking them to give you money.
Yeah.
Like you're offering them an opportunity to participate in the trip. Like they are now on the team. They're a supporting member of the team. And yes, they're supporting you, but they're also supporting the work.
Yeah.
And there are people who are mission-minded, mission-hearted folks who want to make a difference in the missions world, but for whatever reason, they really can't travel. There's 101 reasons that will truly prohibit
absolutely
right? Health problems, 1,000,001 reasons, right? So they can't participate, and that's the way they choose to do it. And from somebody who kind of lives and breathes this stuff, that is just as much of an important component as any other. So one of the things I like to say is like, don't deprive people that opportunity. And I don't mean that in like, you have a great opportunity to give me money, right?
Like the pyramid scheme thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's a timeshare.
Yeah.
Listen, you want to get to the highest level of heaven.
Yeah.
Here's the,
I think somebody already did that. Yeah. So, but seriously, I truly mean that in the most genuine way. That there are people out here who are hearing my voice right now. They're like, "Yeah, dude, like that is how we participate." Yeah. So it's
they're
not
looking for opportunities to be part of that.
And it's not just about you; it's about their opportunity to contribute to the work. And a little side note. There oftentimes is like a culture of anti-social media, anti-phones on mission trip. And I'm kind of the opposite, where like, all right, the phones can become a distraction, and if they do, we'll address it. But like, please have your phone out. Please take photos.
Tell people what you're experiencing.
Please post it on social media. I want everybody to see what God is doing in this place and generate excitement and attention to the work that God's doing in this place and how he's working through you and how he's working through that ministry. Please don't keep this thing a secret.
And documenting those moments, documenting those memories and those visuals, those videos, those people that you were with. It's such a important thing of keeping the work going forward.
Yeah. That's right. And, oftentimes I get back from these trips, or sometimes even while I'm on them, shame on me. I feel a little conviction. I maybe don't post as much as I should, but, I'll tip my hat to the many team members that we have that definitely post a lot. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful for you guys for letting the story be known.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit before you guys actually went on the trip. I know, Josh, you do a decent amount of, like, there's some meetings and stuff that you guys have before. So, Kevin, how'd you feel going up into the trip? Did you feel prepared? Did you feel, were you still pretty nervous when you got in the van? Like, what was your experience there?
No, Josh, in the meetings that we had leading up, I think we had like maybe 6 or something like that.
Okay, sounds right. Yeah.
And it was, most of it was weekly. I know I missed a couple just because of shifts and stuff like that.
I noticed.
Almost.
I don't remember the end of that conversation. There was some stuff that I got left that I missed because I wasn't able to attend them all. Right. But what those meetings did was they, not only did they kind of set us up for the trip and what to expect, and very clear on who has certain skill sets, and hey, we might be able to plug into that, and that's cool. But it also, we all shared a meal every time we met. Miss Patsy hooked us up and took care of us big time.
Yeah.
Every single time. And
Josh, you need to start talking about that with your promo of these things. Like, Patsy's gonna cook.
Yeah.
You'll get a whole lot more sign-ups.
It was definitely some highlights on the trip where the meals.
I bet, yeah.
But the meetings that we had, we all kind of shared a meal. We broke bread together and we prayed together, and then we talked about the trip. The first probably hour of the meeting is just conversing amongst each other and sharing a meal and just building that unit. And you mentioned this while we were there, or I guess at the last meeting. Those meetings serve a purpose, but like it really built our team. And then once we got there and actually started working, it was like we didn't miss a beat because we were all kind of plugged into each other.
You already have a sense of cohesion and unity.
Right. And what was really cool for me is, I see a lot of these folks at church, but I don't know anything about them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I probably knew maybe like 3 or 4 total people really that I knew that went on the trip of the 19, but I've seen all of them. But
sure, yeah.
But I had no idea. I didn't know them deeper. And so I think that was a huge takeaway from those meetings and getting prepared and, hey, this is what you're passionate about. Hey, this is what you do. This is what you're good at, and then, but we were very prepared by the time we got there. With the history of the place we were going, some of the, the guidelines we needed to follow and what we should expect working wise in that community and stuff.
Yeah. Cause you're on reservation, right? While you're working, I'm sure there's stuff to, be wise about and figure out and all those things.
There's some cultural awareness that helps.
That's good.
And not just helps you minute to minute in interacting with people, but I think it's important to have as deep as possible respect and knowledge of the history of the people and interaction between the cultures in that place. I think the more we're aware of the people we're ministering to, the more effective we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not Katie. It's not. It's a whole different,
certainly
a whole different place, a whole different world.
Yeah.
These people's everyday life and decisions they have to make and all that kind of stuff are so foreign to what we deal with day to day here, and so that's just a really important piece of. And I know that's Josh, that's something you do, and because there's that trip. You guys are going to Bulgaria in a month or 2 here, and it's just. Anyway, yeah, the preparation side is just such a big deal, and
Mhm.
I love that that's such a big part of it. So let's talk about the trip itself a little bit. What what the week look like? What did you guys do and experience and get into and screw up and
Well,
Pretty much everything.
yeah,
yeah. The week obviously started for us on the road. And so we
Yeah.
made it up about 10 and a half hours into the drive, and we stayed the night in Kansas. We were joking because we actually slept in a hotel and had like a nice bed and stuff. And these guys had to get up at 3 a.m. and fly. The driving team was more rested by the time we got there
Yeah.
than the
I'll
plane
believe
guys
yeah.
who left the next day, right? Because we woke up, we only had 6 hours to make the second day. We were like, oh man,
It's good.
because
Get breakfast.
yeah, and just it was that was the joke, And so we actually they ended up coming in Sioux Falls Airport, and so we ended up linking up with the team
Yeah.
in Mitchell at a Walmart to kind of get supplies and stuff
Sure.
like that.
Yeah.
So we all kind of reconnected there and then convoyed out to the site. And I gotta say, I am from Oklahoma, and I understand a little bit about Native American culture and stuff like that, but I've never actually been on a reservation. They don't have those in Oklahoma. They have like the nations, right? Like
Sure.
Cherokee
Yeah.
Nation.
Yeah.
And there's casinos everywhere and
Yep.
all kinds of stuff. And but I've never been on an actual reservation. So being and learning about that culture while we were there, and it's almost bittersweet because it's such a beautiful landscape. I mean, with the rolling plains, we were
Yeah.
right.
Saw some of those pictures.
The Missouri River runs right by Diamond
Yeah.
Willow. I spent the week driving a tractor pretty much, and every time I'd leave out the driveway, they'd be staring at the Missouri River and Lake Sharp, which
Yeah.
is a damn
Not a
important
bad
river.
view. Yeah.
Not a bad view at all. But kind of makes you go,
Yeah.
man, just even in such a beautiful place, such hard things are going on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we spent the week. We kind of got our job assignments. Some of the team did HVAC work. They were
Okay.
installing like mini splits and stuff on some of the apartment condo kind of things that they have on site. That's like for staff living and whatnot. And the rest of us ended up getting assigned to work in an orchard. They have a community orchard, which is a really cool idea because it allows the community to come in and pick their own fruit, and they just kind of take what they need. And certainly when you have an impoverished community where, I think the average income for that families there's like $11,000 a year, which that's well below the poverty line in this country, which I think is somewhere around 20,000 or 19,000, something like that. So the community orchard had been hit with drought the year before, and so it was in bad shape. Like it really needed help. They needed to trim back bushes. We had to pull a bunch of bushes out, and we spent the majority of the week as a full team. At least 15 people probably in that orchard almost every day.
Wow.
But to see the pictures of what it looked like before and then what it looked like after was really cool. And what was actually super cool is we were there for like the beginning of spring. Like I think we were there the first time. The first day we were there was the first time it hadn't dropped below freezing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it was nice 70s during the day and then 40s and 50s at night. But as soon as we got that stuff pruned, by the end of it, the orchard had already started blooming.
Wow.
That's cool. Which was so cool, talking about regeneration and stuff like that, and helping the community. But lots of scrapes, lots of thorns,
A few ticks.
some
fun.
picks.
Yeah. Believe that.
I bucked around on a 1962 Massey Ferguson tractor the whole week.
Well, it was mostly Massey Ferguson.
Yeah, well,
Little John Deere, little Mahindra.
it was painted yellow, like a cat.
little Frankenstein of a tractor kind of thing.
It was a 4-mile drive to get there on a dirt road that, and the only suspension on it's in the seat,
Nice.
So I just.
That's a long road for you to drive.
I drove it to and from every day. Luckily, I got smart at the second day, and I put my earphones in and put the Christian music on, and just kind of looked out and enjoyed
Might
the
as well
scenery.
enjoy it, yeah.
So, yeah.
I think one cool, just one cool fact about the orchard is that it had some of the traditional fruits you'd normally find in an orchard. There's like row of apple and pear and a few others, but some of the rows were devoted to like their heritage fruits there, stuff that I had never heard of, like choke cherries.
Oh yeah,
buffalo berries. Like when he first told me, I'm like, buffalo berries? That's not a real fruit. I made that up.
So it's a blackberry that you call a buffalo berry.
It actually looks like a weird blueberry.
Interesting.
Yeah. So and a few others too that
Yeah.
I can't remember. Some special kind of cherry. A few others that I don't know, but I thought that was like a extra cool detail.
Yeah.
Where it's keeping some of their heritage alive. It gets them to stay in contact with some of those original customs, original food.
Yeah.
That
It's a
they
big
had,
deal.
that's a big part of their history and still honors that. I think Kevin did an excellent job of describing the project and nailed it. One cool thing is that Rod Vaughn, the founder and pastor of Diamond Willow, he was kind of working arm in arm with us a lot of that time. And, I know that's something that he's really passionate about personally, fruit trees and orchards and stuff. So to see him kind of light up in a really cool way and get really engaged with that too. And that's a big part of missions work. I try to get this through to all team members. Like our number one earthly job is to support the missionary, right? We're not going there to do our thing. We're going there to support, in this case, Rod.
Who's there every single day.
This is his show. Like what he says goes. We're there to support him. And the last thing I want is our partners to be like, oh no, we got to do another mission trip. Like I want the opposite. Like, yay, they're coming. And to see Rod especially engaged and uplifted and encouraged through the work that Kevin and the team did there was extra valuable to me.
Yeah, well, walking away from that place, wherever it is you go to do the missions work with that missionary, like I said, who's there. It's such a funny that we talk about the difficulty of fundraising, of taking the step out to go. Think about taking the step of, for the rest of my life, this is what I'm going to do, and helping put in perspective what we do as a missions trip to help support somebody who's dedicated their entire life to this work.
That's right.
And being able to walk away, that person maybe inspired more, maybe refilled, refueled, excited to take on the next, because it's a hard life. A noble life, a effective life, a needed thing for sure, but it is not an easy road for them whatsoever. So the fact that we hopefully can be an effective kind of spark plug into pushing them on to the next, however long they need to get to before that somebody else helps push them forward to the next thing to continue that daily work is such a big deal.
It is, and that's an apt description of Rod as well. Well, before I start, I am not an authorized biographer of Rod Vaughn. I'm sure I'm screwing some of this up. Sorry, Rod. But my best telling of the story is, Rod and his entire family have done just that. They have devoted their lives to this people group in this place. He had a career with Park Service, Forestry Service or something.
Corps of Engineers.
Corps of Engineers.
Ranger.
And he could have went in that direction and done all kinds of things with his life. But
absolutely.
Due to a fascinating origin story with him and his connection with the Native communities, he was called by God and listened to that call, and has devoted his entire life to that place and those people. And I find that to be beyond admirable. And anything that we can do to support him, I'm his biggest advocate and cheerleader.
Well, and to have his family be all in like they are too. His son's 30 years old. His son and his wife and their kids. I mean, the conviction and the mission is generationally in their family. Like his son Aaron is picking up that torch and he's running with it to do the same thing and following in his dad's footsteps. And I think that's really cool. It's not like, well, Rod reached the end and he's ready to retire and he gets to leave, right. Okay, did my work and this is the impact I made. No, Aaron's now running with it,
Yeah.
So it's a family mission for them,
Yeah, that's awesome. So Kevin, we've talked a lot about a lot of things, but I am curious I don't want to ask like super cliche, like what was your favorite moment of the trip? But was there any, just really impactful things that you walked away from? Any kind? What was a life-changing moment? I don't want to get too so crazy about it.
There was a couple, man. I think the biggest takeaway from me overall, just the overall takeaway from the trip was I've never, I'm like I've told you, I'm kind of new in this journey, and
Yeah.
I have never been in a place surrounded by so many people intentionally speaking about the Word of God. The conversations that we had with just team members on a daily basis, um, they just naturally were centered around these conversations about the Bible and about their stories, and it's everyone seems to have the same version of the same testimony. Everybody has gone through some hardships and everything, and that was the biggest thing for me. Is like I was for 9 days I was surrounded by this, and I've never intentionally been immersed in that experience for so long. But it left me wanting, like, for instance, profanity, right? Like nobody swore on that trip. I'm a police officer. Like,
Yeah,
my culture is like
all
that.
day, every day. It's around you.
That's part of the alphabet, for my culture. And I came home and I was like, oh, keep this going, and that's been something that I've been struggling with before the trip, but coming out of it, it just was an extra level of you can commit to this. You can do.
This is a thing that's attainable. It's not.
But being immersed by fellow Christians, fellow believers, and constantly, digging into the Word. I mean, they started our day with devotionals. We ended our day with highs and lows. Most of the guys ended the day or started the morning reading the Bible.
Yeah.
It was just really, really a cool, inspiring experience for me in that sense. But as far as being there, the church service day, man, I felt God moving in that place, man. I truly did. I mean, we're there, and it's a very small. I think there was probably like 40 or 50 people in there, and we were 20 of them. But there was a lot of native folks that were there in the service. And it was a very like the music always speaks to me. It was a very acoustic set. There's a guy drumming on a drum box and a guy playing acoustic guitar, and man, I just singing songs, and it hit me. I started bawling in church. I did. It was a really moving experience for me to look around and see the presence of God in that place, and that's the best way I can describe it. Is it really hit me. In that moment, in that church service, in this small church, for what's happening in this community and how God's impacting that community. And for me to be allowed to be a part of it was a pretty profound experience for me personally. So that was one. And then the last day, we ended up going out to a cemetery that's like 8 miles off a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, which is like my perfect spot. That's my happy place. You got the rolling plains, you got the Missouri River in the background, and we helped run barbed wire. And I could have done that in my cowboy hat for the rest of my life, man. Looking around and seeing God's creation around us in a very untouched place. It's very rural. It's very rolling plains. It's a world I've never really seen before outside of Texas,
Sure.
And Texas doesn't look like that.
Right. Yeah.
But it was a very humbling experience for me to be there on that last day. And the fact that we were able to get projects done. Yeah. I know that a lot of times the projects, we've done our part of the project, but we can't be there all the time.
Sure. It's a week. You get done.
But having 19 people there, we were able to check the box on a lot of stuff and actually leave things finish for the next group.
That's cool.
Which was a really cool experience to be able to walk away. And the last day, we were able to get the barbed wire run. We were able to get the corner post set. We were able to mow the cemetery. It was the first cutting of the year. Michael Chavez almost burned the whole cemetery down. His lawnmower caught fire.
Oh, gosh. Oh.
We put it out. Don't worry.
Oh, good.
It's all good. It's all good.
Do that. That might be a bad way.
Yeah, we might not have been invited back.
It's really good week, except for the last.
Yeah,
except for the fire.
Yeah, we might not have been invited back.
Yeah, you might get
thanks for the help.
There, yeah,
appreciate it. But being able to leave, knowing that we helped, God used us for a purpose in that place.
Yeah.
And then just being able to be there to experience God in that place.
Yeah.
Through Rod and his ministry, through Diamond Willow, and it is moving. It's stuff is happening there. I mean, you said that that Takata Youth Center has been, a project that's been in the works for a while, and here we are showing up, and there it is built, and they have people there, and people are attending, and so.
I was just thinking, like, all the stuff we talked about at the beginning, that is these roadblocks, obstacles, whatever, the things that immediately come to mind as reasons why I can't go. Most of those things are the reasons why you need to go. to be released from those things for 6 days or whatever it is, or a week or 10 days or however long the trip is, so that you can be in this very focused, intense and intentional community that's extremely focused on God and His Word, that's extremely focused on who He is, and all those distractions and all those things that are just part of our lives, that, you know, the work stuff, the schedule, the stuff that numbs us, though, to God working in our lives a lot of times, to allow you to be in a place to when you come to church, that after those experiences, you're in a different place spiritually when you approach a worship service like that. Mm-hmm. You're in a different place mentally. You're in a different place, and God. It's not that God doesn't move in all the church services. When you are in a different place through yourself, though, and you're truly worshiping, and you're not distracted, and you're fully in. And welcome to the club of bawling in church, by the way.
Thank you.
But
you've been a good role model for me.
Yeah. But there's just a reality to, if you're watching this or thinking, and you've thought about going on a missions trip, and your biggest reasons are, well, there's just too much in my life going on, I just can't. Then you should, because you need to drop those things for a few days and allow God to work on you for a few days. And I think, because similarly to what you were saying, of everybody kind of has a similar story, different details. Very rarely do I talk to people, especially after their first trip, your story is not unique in that God works on you and changes you in those days.
Mm-hmm. I think you bring up something really important, and it's a one of the more transformative parts about being on a mission team is that, you mentioned you have all of these responsibilities, all these things, that reasons you can't go. And for sure, like, we all have those things, yep. Right? Like, yep. there's always a better month that the trip could be. Maybe next year would be better, always. Sure. And I think a lot of it boils down to our individual roles and responsibilities in life, right? Mm-hmm. Got too much going on at work. My kids have this, my wife, whatever, mm-hmm. husband. And it is important that we fulfill these roles, but there's something about going on a mission trip that's even different than serving in your church, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, you are still serving in your church, but in this different way, where I say this in the lead up meetings, you're kind of taking off your hat in a way. Yeah. Like, we're always the same person. Our character doesn't change. Right. Our beliefs don't change. But when we go there, I'm kind of taking off.
You get to release
mostly,
that for a while. Yeah.
Mostly, babe, my husband hat.
Right.
I'm mostly taking off my dad hat. Yeah. I'm mostly taking off my, you name it, next door neighbor hat. All of those things become a far secondary part of my role. And all of a sudden, I'm the tractor operator and mission team teammate and bunkie for some guy named Jim now. Right. That's my new role that God has given me. I'm wearing this new hat this week. And I think there is something not just cathartic, right? Like, that is a freeing, cool thing, but it's more than that. I think God refines us in that time and gives us a new perspective on kind of who He's called us to be in a way. And then on the flip side of that, there's something special about putting that husband hat, that wife hat, that dad, mom hat back on when you get home. Something changes there too. And I think that's one of the more fundamental transformative things that God can do if you let Him. Right. And that's the hard part. Sometimes some of us don't want to let go of those things, right? Like, if you go on a mission trip, please call your husband and wife regularly. But
you still want those things.
Don't be FaceTiming with them 5 hours a day,
right? Yeah.
Because you're not really present. Taking that hat off, right? And I tell people this too, like, hey, we all have jobs. Respond to your work email, please. Right?
Yeah. Don't get fired.
Call. Yeah. Please don't get fired. We want you to come back. Yeah. Respond to that email. Take that call if you have to. But if you need to be so immersed in your work while you're on the trip, maybe this isn't the trip for you. If you have some mega project happening that you need to be on the phone 3 hours a day and you need to bring a full stock ticker with you in order to go on the trip, then maybe not. And I would even challenge more. Do you really need that? Do you really need to make that phone call? Or are you not surrendering that role to its proper place for the week and letting God do his thing.
Yeah. No, that's great stuff. The other thing I thought about too was just when you mentioned 90 people being able to go, and it's certainly not all about numbers, but I just think of like the difference that like say 10 people make and the ripple effects that has. Say 10 of those people didn't say yes, didn't decide that, yeah, God, you want me to go, I'm going to go. A 10-person trip still would have been great.
Fantastic.
You would have probably gotten about half as much done. And that means that whoever the next group is there picks up that spot from a very different place. The work that was able to go in and go forward, what that's able to do for the next group to go forward. We don't think, so when you're thinking of that, they probably already had enough. There's never the enough. If 40 people go next year, there will be that much more work that gets done, right? Like that's the mentality. Yeah.
I'll be there.
Yeah, you'll need a couple more vans probably.
Yeah.
But how much more can be done then? And 40 people ain't that much in a 1,000-person church.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality. It feels like, 20, 30 people, that's amazing. It is amazing. It could be more amazing. And at risk of, selling this whole thing way too hard, I don't want it to come across like, but there's just so much that is done in these times. And we talk about being a church of roof wreckers. And we had just come off of that series, right? And Darren talked a lot about that, and you preached about it. And that mentality, not just being just a helper or whatever. We're going to go really do some damage to some roofs. We're going to blow some stuff up. We're going to make lasting impacts. That's the image that I think of when we say roof wreckers. It's like a wrecking ball coming in and just destroying that thing. That's the force that we ought to want to be with the gospel. Not just, we tossed a little pebble in.
Mm-hmm.
No, we threw a big old boulder in there, and now there's waves going. And being a church that says yes and goes excitedly and experiences the things that you've experienced. That's, it's just such an awesome thing. And I'd love for you to share a little bit, Kevin, because I'm sure that you mentioned, we were talking beforehand, that you've now started a Bible study at your house.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about, like, are those things connected at all? Is that the one thing led to another? Or is that just something else that's kind of come up along the way?
So I put this out to law enforcement officers to do a Bible study just for law enforcement.
Because you've graduated seminary, right?
Yeah.
No, I say that, and I meant to mention this too. Other than you, how many staff people went?
0.
This was not. It's not a. I think that's maybe another misperception.
Yeah.
You have to have some type of like whatever.
I'm so far from it. It's not.
Yeah.
Like I said, March was really when this kind of transformation happened in my life.
Yeah.
And so I've wanted to do this, and I've kind of been. It's interesting whenever your heart changes, man. Like, it's not about checking a box and like I should do this. It's like, no, I'm really feeling pulled to do this, And so I kind of reached out to a bunch of guys. This was before the trip, but the first meeting was yesterday, post trip, and I will tell you that there was a lot of insecurity behind it. Like I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just hosting. You know what I mean? Like I haven't even,
somewhere.
Yeah.
I haven't even read this book, this gospel yet.
Yeah.
We were going to go through Luke, and I told the guys, I'm like, we're going through this together, man. I'm not a teacher. I'm just hosting it, man.
Yeah.
I'm just gathering people, and let's have a conversation about it. And that first meeting was last night. I ended up with like 40 guys and girls that I texted about this meeting a month or two ago. 16 of them were interested, which blew me away, because I didn't even know that these folks, were in the midst of my, my world.
Yeah.
It's not something that's talked about. It's not macho and authoritarian, like that police officers feel like they have to be, It's love, touchy feeling, showing
crying
grace,
in church. No,
showing
that's
grace,
not okay.
grace to people. Like, what is that?
Justice. That's
yeah, right. Just put the hammer down.
That's
right.
right.
So, 16 people reached out. Yesterday was our first meeting, and I only had 4. I had 7 people originally, 3 backed out last minute. So we ended up with 4 of us in my living room. And, I'll tell you what, I got discouraged, man. I was like, and I was talking before the meeting, I was like, the devil just kept taking hits at us. My wife was going to kind of keep an eye on kids, and then she got pulled to an HOA meeting and, for work. And then, my group dwindled down to 4 people, and I was like, do I cancel it? Like, it's only 4 people. And so now we're going to do it. And then we were watching a video, and the video kept glitching, and I was like, not today, devil. Not today, man. We're not. But what it did was it just furthered, we talk about building your life on that foundation. And so what it did for me, this mission trip, was it continued to solidify the foundation.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. This is what I want my life to be about. And I want to build my life and my faith and my relationship with God on that firm foundation.
Yeah.
And so it gave me, I guess, a little more confidence in those moments where it'd be real easy for us, like we were talking about the mission trip. Oh, well, I don't know if I can get off of this. I don't know if I can put time.
Sure.
I gotta be away from my family. In those moments, it gave me the confidence to go, no, this needs to happen. Like, there's a purpose behind this. There's a reason why God put this on my heart. We're still, I don't care if it's me and another guy. I don't care if it's me in my living room.
Yeah.
I'm still going to read that chapter.
We're going to read Luke. Right.
And we're going to go from there, and we're going to see what happens with that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And so then now we're going to start meeting on Tuesdays, and we'll see what happens.
That's so cool, man. That's it. Those are the kind of stories that, like I said, stuff happens, but and the importance of sharing those things, because I think going back to the missions trip, even being able to experience some of the things you experience, the other thing that does to us as husbands, as fathers, as whatever, bosses or employees, or whatever other hats we tend to wear, we want other people to have those experiences. And so the further we get in our journey with God, the closer we get to him, the more amazing we realize he is. It's like, come on, y'all. This is so good.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you want other people to have that in their life. And that's why taking these faith steps is important, because it's not just about you and your journey. It's about how that's going to affect others in their journey with Christ too. And like, wherever that starts, if it's, 4 people in a living room, that's okay. And it's probably a good thing, if there's 40 people in your living room right now, that might be a little much. So,
well, what was so cool about it is, it was only 4 of us, but because there's only 4 of us, I shared kind of my testimony and how, why I am here where I'm at this point in my faith and stuff like that. And another guy that, I've known for like 7 years, but didn't know that well. Like, I just knew him as he worked for another agency. Man, he felt comfortable enough to kind of share a really hard story in his life. And, having that collective, law enforcement, we all kind of, carry the burden, if you will.
Yeah.
And that I kind of relate.
It's a very specific lifestyle.
I kind of relate that to the mission trip. We all kind of carried this. It's like you were among friends. You know what I mean? Like, this group, people felt comfortable in the group with our Bible study because we're all police officers. We all carry that burden. People felt comfortable in the mission trip because we all were pushing the same path, the same mission, the same purpose. And we were able to, I talked to a lot of people, and like I said earlier, it's funny to share testimony that sounds very similar, like
same,
that's a same. Yeah, me too, like, but yeah, really cool stuff is happening. And
that's cool,
dude. I am certainly not confident in it, but I am trying my best to go where he's leading me.
Yeah, well, and that's the best possible thing you can do. Before we wrap up, normally I have like a little like funny story or whatever, but I think the best way to land the plane on this one here, I'd love for you guys to both share the best. You teased the food that you had on the trip. What was the best food you guys had on the trip this last time?
You go first, man.
Let's see here. The best food was probably the last night. We had ribeyes last night. Josh and his culinary.
Josh, you're underselling mission trips.
Greatness. He grilled up some steaks for us, and Miss Patsy had some sides, and I can't remember the last time I had a steak. I don't usually roll like that. But and it was great. It was really great. That was the night that Rod and Val kind of came in and shared a little bit of history. Or no, I'm sorry, that was the night before. But the whole experience of just it was the last night. It was like the last kind of like this was the final meal that we all were going to have together and share tomorrow before everyone had to like split and leave. And it was really cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. And dang, steak.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to go wrong with steak night, right? And the way I see it is with all of the hard work and sacrifice that everybody makes throughout that entire week, we could finish the thing off with a steak dinner.
Bang. Yeah.
And another cool part of that is, we share that steak dinner with members of the community who drop in and the Diamond Willow staff. So it's not just our team who gets the treat; it's the entire community that gets to join us too. So that's cool.
And that was every meal, really. Anybody around, they could come on down. Miss Patsy was cooking up a storm every single day.
She was.
Cool. Yeah,
she was.
That's cool.
For me, like I guess one of the inside struggles of being a missions pastor is, on my regular life, I try my best to eat well, eat good, like eat healthy. But once you get out in these places, man, I learned early.
Options
you just go with the flow, right?
What's available. Yeah.
Right. So I enjoy the food while I'm out there. So I kind of indulged in some sweets. And there was one night where I think Miss Patsy made a Texas sheet cake. And then Chrissy, I think it was her sous chef assistant the whole time. She made a tres leches cake.
A chocolate tres leches.
Chocolate tres leches cake. Yeah, I went back to that the little dessert station probably at least one time too many.
You're burning extra calories, so you need.
I tell myself that too, but my pants fit tighter by the end of the trip.
What was really cool about that is, so that was Sunday. That was my birthday.
Oh wow!
So May 7th was my birthday, and they got a card for me, and
that's awesome.
They ended up, Miss Patsy brought a candle out on the sheet cake, and
it's cool.
It really was a family. It really was. Man, that's awesome. It really was.
And you know what? Maybe this is a good thing to kind of end on here is, we talk a lot about like the work that God does through us, right? The project's getting done and ministering to people. We talked a little bit about like the work that God does in us, right? And a little bit of like how God is now using Kevin in this Bible study, like what Kevin took from the mission trip or how that propelled him. But I think there's another angle of it. There's 100 other angles. We could do a 10-hour podcast on it, but this one I think is important. How God works between us, like that's a big reason why we do a lot of the meetings. Yes, there's information that you need to know, but I could send you a long email, right? A lot of it is building the team, building these relationships. And once, if we build those relationships before we go, the roots are down. Now they can blossom while we're there, oftentimes I hear people say like, well, I went to this one church or whatever, and I just never really got to know anybody there. Yeah, it was okay. It didn't feel right. Well, how involved did you get? Right? Like I'm the type of person, like if I don't have an activity to do with the person, I'm less likely to really get to know them, right?
Absolutely.
Like for instance, Kevin and I, we've crossed paths at church and said, hey, how you doing? And this and that for a couple of years now. But it wasn't until we were using a half broke down tractor and pulling stumps out of the ground did we start to share our testimonies with one another and really get to know each other in a different way. It wasn't until people will remain unnamed, listen to him snore for a couple of nights, right? You get a different level of relationship, a different level of familiarity. And it was like, yes, before the trip, our meetings and our stuff makes us a team, but while we're away, God makes us a family. And I don't think there's anything else that I've experienced that can do that in a way that a mission trip does.
That's awesome. Well, that's great stuff, guys. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you guys for being part of it. I do think telling these stories is important, and I appreciate you guys both being willing to. You especially, Kevin. You're supposed to share. That's part of your job.
I don't have a choice.
You're here anyway.
You're here anyway.
No, but seriously, I do appreciate you, Kevin, being open and being willing to share your experience. So thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. It's been a great win meeting. Lots of wins to celebrate together today.
Absolutely. Very well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go team.
Let's do it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for joining us for this win meeting. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Win Meeting and to subscribe to the Current Christian Church channel on YouTube. We'd also love to hear your wins, so send us a message on our Instagram and share with us some of the ways God is winning in your life.